America, we got to get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. Hey, former Congressman Joe Walsh with you this Thursday. Hope you're having a good week. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for listening. As always, follow me pretty much everywhere at Walsh Freedom. This is the social contract with Joe Walsh. As everybody knows, maybe 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Gosh, time flies. It was almost 7 years ago, I publicly turned against Trump. For the last number of years, I've been on a mission to speak with people who don't necessarily think like me. I don't want to talk to people who think like me. That's boring. And I don't think we learn anything. And I think, as I say often, this country is dangerously divided. We should not, too many of us do, we should not hate the people we disagree with. I'm looking forward to this conversation because I don't know how much this guy and I disagree. I think we do on a number of things, but I'm anxious to chat with him. Will Murphy is his name. Hello, Will.
Hello?
Will is I was going to say Will's a young conservative, but everybody's young to me, Will, because I'm an old fart. Will is a young conservative. He's a video editor, works for a conservative nonprofit organization. You can follow him on Twitter at Will_M1399. Will, thank you, my friend, for joining me. And thank you for...
Thank you.
No, you got it, boss. Thanks for reaching out to me. Maybe once a month or so, I will just send out a tweet or send out a post encouraging everybody. If you love me or hate me, if you disagree with me about something, DM me and I'll have you on the podcast. I love speaking with people, right, who don't kind of necessarily think like me. You reached out to me and I really appreciated it. And this will jumpstart our conversation. But correct me. I'll kind of set you up. You reached out to me, wanted to talk to me. I think I'm a conservative, but you're disappointed, I think, in some of the stances I've taken. Maybe I've become too much of a never Trumper. But you reached out in a really respectful way, and I wanted to respond in kind. So let's start there, Will. You reached out to me. You wanted to sit down. Why? From your perspective. And welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I love that you do this. That's something that's definitely lacking these days, is wanting to actually talk to someone is not going to agree with you. And I went into this knowing, I see your posts, and I went into this knowing I might get absolutely humbled on a lot of things. But
hey. I have a potty mouth. Fuck you. You won't get humbled. You and we're both Americans. So there's we're the same. We're just having a conversation. I don't do debates anymore. And I went on with Mehdi Hassan 3 weeks ago.
Oh boy.
Will, he promised me a respectful conversation about Israel. It was the antithesis of that.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I don't do shit like that. I like to just have conversations. So start us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I followed you for years. You probably don't remember me specifically. I did meet you a long time ago, back in 2017. You spoke at Turning Point USA.
Oh my God.
You gave a speech I'll never forget about never idolizing a politician. They'll fail you 100% of the time.
I remember that speech.
Yeah, it's very relevant now. But it's pretty funny how times have changed. You used to be speaking at Turning Point.
Think about that, Will. That's like in the nether years. Think about that. I think I stopped speaking at Turning Point maybe late 17. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I caught you at the tail end there. But yeah, no, I've been following you for years. I appreciate your page a lot because the reason I follow you is I did vote for Trump in 2024. I voted for him in 2020. Obviously, I get those narratives a lot, the MAGA narrative. So I've always followed you because you've always been kind of like the devil's advocate. Like, what is Joe saying that Republicans aren't telling me?
Yeah.
Um, so I've always liked to see what you say. But that doesn't mean I agree with everything you say. I've just been seeing your posts over the years, and I've just thought, this would be a great person to talk to. I'd love to like pick your brain a little bit. And
Do
yeah, I just
you, Will, do you can like if MAGA is way over here, hardcore full on MAGA, and Joe Walsh never Trumpers are way over here, place yourself on that spectrum. Where are you?
um, I mean, I would say I'm probably somewhere in the middle, probably just barely a little bit on the side towards MAGA.
Hmm.
So I used to be like full on Trump train. Trump can do no wrong. Um, I don't think like that anymore. In fact, I will say that if we were talking 2 weeks ago, that I would probably be more pro-Trump than I am right now, or probably will end up agreeing on some things.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm kind of in this weird middle ground where for people that don't like Trump, I'm MAGA in their eyes, and then for people that love him, I'm too critical of him at times. So it's like a weird sort of middle ground.
I, and I get that. I hear that. One of the reasons I did want to have this conversation is because and this may surprise some of my liberal listeners, my progressive listeners.
Mhm.
I was there with kind of Turning Point at the very beginning when I got elected to Congress back in 2010. And I used to love to speak to Turning Point back in the day.
Mm.
Um, and when you reached out and said that you remember me speaking there and you followed me, and I genuinely got from your email or your direct message just a little bit of like maybe disappointment's the wrong word, but a sense that, hey, Joe, I love you. I love what you say, but man, you become too never Trumper, man. You're out there too much for Democrats. Explain that. Was there some of that there? Because I sensed it. And that's what I was curious about that I think would be interesting to chat about.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of your criticisms of Trump are very valid, but every once in a while I see a post something where, in my opinion, it's not even never Trump; it's entering the territory of Democratic talking points. So,
Hmm.
like for example, like a couple weeks ago, for example, I forget exactly what it was. I think it might have been it was something to do with the Republicans and the trans issue. It
Uh,
might have even been the issue where they were, no, I'll address you by the correct pronouns in the House session or whatever that was. But you said something in the post along the lines of Republicans be better. You're on the wrong side of this issue. Americans fully support the trans issue. Um,
hmm.
and I saw that and I was like, that's just so not true. You look at the polling data and like 79% of voters are totally on track with the Republican stance of not having men and women's sports and the two genders being
Hmm.
recognized. So, I just see things like that every once in a while. And it's like, I feel like those are kind of like the talking points that like end up biting the Democrats in the ass. Cause you look at the polling data as well. And the
Hmm.
last election, that was a big issue for voters. And so I think when you go out there and you say, no, this is something that all Americans are on the side of, uh, I just don't think that's true.
Um, you probably know me well enough, or you can guess. And I say I've said a lot of stupid things over the years. No talking points out of me. No Republicans could never give me talking points, and Democrats will never give me talking points. But you
Mhm.
make a really interesting. You make an interesting observation, my younger friend. Um, I have no doubt become like way more, and you might get mad at me. I proudly call myself woke. I proudly call myself a proud
Seen that.
woke,
Yeah.
a proud woke conservative. But and we don't have time to get into all that. But on it's interesting, Will, on the transgender issue, here's kind of what I meant, and then pick me apart. Like I think most Americans, and you know me, I might have exaggerated and said 90% of Americans. I think most Americans, when it comes to transgender Americans, transgender men and women, most Americans are like loving, embracing, identify however you want to identify, live
Mhm.
your honest life. We support you. We love you. Boom. When it comes to transgender women in sports, timeout. We got to be fair.
Mhm.
You can't compete with women when it comes to bathrooms and locker rooms. Let's respect
Yeah,
the privacy of both sides. I think that's where most Americans are, like all of that.
I
And
agree with that. Yeah.
I think the left went way too far, kind of pushing it down our throats too much. But then will educate me. To me, MAGA, the MAGA right on transgenderism is like, and correct me, it's a mental illness. It doesn't exist. We're not going to recognize them. And then they get into sports and bathrooms. What's your thought on that?
Well, they certainly exist. And anybody who's saying they don't exist is that's
Or it's
just
not a real thing. It's like a mental illness. It's not a real thing.
well, I would agree. Well, first of all, I think that's kind of contradictory. You can't say it's not a real thing and it's mental illness at the same time. Like a mental illness is something. But I would agree that yes, gender dysphoria is. Um, and there's also I've noticed there's like different categories because this whole transgender thing has exploded so much that
Mhm.
you have actual people that suffer from gender dysphoria who believe they're in the wrong body, who want to get surgery or puberty blockers or put on hormones. So that's like gender dysphoria. But then you have people, especially in younger people, this trend that's exploded where they just start going by a they or that I'm a man, but I feel kind of feminine. These are different pronouns. That's not really transgender. I don't know. It kind of gets lumped in. There's gender non-binary. It gets confusing, is what I'm saying. But like when it
Yeah.
comes to the actual gender dysphoria, I would agree with that and say yes, that is a mental illness. But that at the same time, I'm not saying that in order to put someone down or say they're any less than having a mental illness is a part of being a human. Like I could sit here and I'd say through my life I've suffered from depression and anxiety. Those are
Yeah.
disorders.
But you
But
would you say, Will, like most Americans, and this is the point I always try to make on the issue.
yeah.
Most Americans, especially when we talk about transgender men and women, 18 years and older adults, most men and most Americans are live and let live. We love and embrace you. Identify however you want to identify. Let's all just live our lives. Wouldn't you? Most Americans, I think, are there. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree, and I can sit here and tell you that even if you're over 18, uh, getting the surgery and all the permanent procedures done, in my opinion, is probably not the best thing for you to do to yourself. But I think you should be allowed to do that. I think you should be an adult to do that.
Mhm.
And I think you're right. Most Americans, it's the under 18 part that really is a problem for a lot of people.
I agree, and again, I think, um, to me, it's a fascinating issue. I think kinda like there's kind of like a common sense approach when it comes to kids, therapy, and obviously no surgery and anything on young kids or
Mm.
any children at all. But I think most Americans are there. I guess the point I always try to make when I rattle off like what sounded like a talking point to you is just kind of like loving and embracing. And I don't think when I listen to MAGA on the transgender issue, there seems to be a cruelty I hear.
Mhm.
Um, but I acknowledge that Democrats, maybe this is part of what I do, Will, because I come from the right. I think Democrats are afraid to fight on a lot of these culture war issues, and I think they ought to learn how to fight on them. I'll give you the final word on that one.
Well, I mean, they're absent. I don't know where they are, but
I agreed.
but oh, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. In terms of the cruelty, like for example, going back to the example with McBride, and you were saying that's the cruelty. The cruelty is what they sell. It's the
Yes.
public humiliation of no, no, no. You're going to go by this. So the way I see it is, uh, because like throughout my life, I've known several trans people. I've been friends with trans people, and
Mhm.
the way I view it is like, uh, I know these people. They have my respect. They've earned my respect. If they want me to call them by their pronouns, I will do that. But when it's on a wider national scale and people are kind of trying to cram this stuff down through the law, for example, the sports or the locker room bills, that is, you haven't earned my respect. I don't know who you are. Stop invading my private space. That's wrong. And when it comes to the McBride thing, sure, that specific instance, I can see why that is totally unnecessary and rude. But at the same time, there was a whole controversy with that person beforehand about using the opposite bathroom, and it was silly. It wasn't needed. There's already, I mean, the lawmakers have their own personal bathroom. There's already a gender neutral bathroom there. I don't know why it was a problem at all.
But that okay, but that's and Will, thank you for jogging my memory. I forgot about the Sarah McBride incident. The
Yeah.
other, I'm forgetting the Republican congressman's name. Republicans are doing this, identifying her as Mr. Congressman or Sir or do you agree with me? Like, and again, you don't have to. Like to me, that's just a dick thing to say. That's a jagoff thing to say. That's just cruel. We're both adults. We're both congressmen and women. We're both congress people. I identify as a woman. I'm a transgender woman. Just identify me as Madam Congressman. Do you agree that that's just the decent thing to do at that level? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's just it's not needed. It's certainly not a good example of how you should just talk to any trans person at all times. Um, but at the same time, it's like, here's the thing: I don't know totally a lot about McBride or what McBride votes on. But at the same time, again, if I'm putting myself in the Republican shoes and talking about the earning respect thing, I mean, I'm fine with calling someone by the pronouns they prefer, but I would find it a little bit more difficult if the case was is if I'm doing this towards somebody that again is trying to get these bills passed that make this everybody's problem. Um, but personally, I would not make a spectacle out of it in public.
you Will, if you were a Republican congressman, and this is your answer, I don't want to pressure you into an answer. If you were a Republican congressman and you were addressing Congresswoman McBride, would you address her by her preferred pronoun or not?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, you know what? I mean, probably because it's just at the end of the day, there's bigger things to focus on, and it's it doesn't matter. It's a stupid thing to get hung up on. It's
And
especially in
this
public view. Yeah.
and like and we don't need to talk about the transgender issue, but that's interesting, and you jogged my memory, and that's part of my beef against MAGA is I do think there's just cruelty in the MAGA agenda. I think Trump's just a cruel asshole to begin with. You and I would probably agree. I think the left swung the pendulum a little too far in a number of
Mhm.
areas, and Trump seems to be, the pendulum swing and overreaction the other way.
Yeah.
But there just seems to be a cruelty in so many of my former friends on the right, not you, but so many that I hear. Do you see some of that, or is that maybe that's if that's a Democratic talking point, tell me, doggone it, you.
Yeah, you're who's paying you, Joe? um, no, but no,
Like,
it's
what is your you're not full on hardcore MAGA. I'm full on hardcore never Trumper.
mhm.
What's your biggest beef with never outspoken public never Trumpers like me? What's your biggest beef?
I just feel like from Never Trumpers, you know exactly what you're gonna get, and when I say that, I mean Trump obviously does a lot of bad things, but there are some things he has wins on with policy, and with the Never Trump crowd, I don't ever see any sort of recognition for any of that, and it's a very one-sided uh, argument, I guess I would say, or perspective. So it's kind of like if I turn on, and I'm not going to compare you to Fox because I think you're more honest than them, but
Yeah.
like, in terms of it being one-sided. Uh, so
Yeah.
I guess with the Never Trumpers, that's what I would say. But I appreciate us talking because most of the Never Trumpers, one of my biggest gripes with them is I can't talk to them because if I say one thing, oh, I agree with this border bill or that what
Yeah.
Trump did here, you fascist. How could you do that? Why do you support an authoritarian? Why do you do this? I'm like, whoa, I just agreed with like one policy. Calm down.
Well,
So it's impossible to have dialogue. But
Will, you make a great point, and I appreciate that. I can see that because I often have a real hard time getting people from the right, from the MAGA right, to sit down with me. I can see where you may have a hard time getting never Trumpers to engage in dialogue. It's crazy. We need to engage. Um,
yeah,
do and you raise a good point. And this is part of what I wrestle with. Obviously, I don't, and I've never from the beginning disagreed with Trump on every policy because I am a conservative. Uh, it's just like because I think he's such a threat to democracy and the rule of law, it's like I've had to put policy like up on the
yeah,
shelf
mhm,
for the last 6 years. And in a lot of ways that sucks, but I've
yeah.
had to. I can't speak for other never Trumpers, but it's just to me, it's always like I'm one of those guys. I think he's a threat to democracy, so I say it, and like nothing's more important than that. Um, do you you vote? You and I voted for him in 16. You voted for him in 16, 20, and 24.
I wasn't old enough in 16,
Oh,
so the
that's right.
last two times, yeah.
Um, have you grown more or less enthused for him
I would
over
say
time?
less for sure.
Why? Why what do you think that is?
Uh, Here's the thing. I knew that going into this second term, I was taking a risk. Uh, I knew that risk was because here's the thing. I was actually a fan of his first term overall. Besides the end, his last year was not good. I wasn't a fan of any of his rhetoric surrounding the election or January 6th or anything like that. So I knew going into this I was taking a risk.
Mhm.
But the way I saw it was uh, you had Kamala versus Trump, and Trump was the change candidate. If people want to know like why she lost, like it could be summed up really quick, which
Why?
was
Tell me why you think she lost.
so exit polling and the 2024 election showed that about like 70% of Americans thought we were headed on the wrong track, and this was about maybe 2 weeks after she went on The View, and she was asked if you could change anything about the last 4 years, what would it be? And she
That
said,
was
I
a
wouldn't
bad
change
answer.
a
That was a
single
bad
thing. And
answer.
so when she says, I want to flip the page, she's talking about herself, and Trump was the change candidate. So uh, I voted for him, hoping, what's happening. The trajectory of the last 4 years, it's got to stop. I don't know if we can take it anymore. And I know that if Trump wins, I was hoping and praying. I hope it's similar to his first term. Um, and since then, since he's had his second term, uh, don't get me wrong, he has had a lot of policy wins in areas where I think it counts. But at the same time, some of my biggest fears are coming to fruition in terms of, he's hiring the people he's hiring for the most part seem like yes men to me.
Mm.
Um, I don't like that. He's really going balls to the wall with, and I always kind of knew he would test his executive authority. And I think a lot of them are actually really important questions that need to go to the Supreme Court, questions that should be answered. But um, yeah, he's really going hard. He's going a lot faster than I thought he would. He's a lot more aggressive than I thought he would be. And then he's doing things as well that he never campaigned on. He never mentioned a lot of, like, for example, a lot of his foreign policy stuff, like not one time, unless I'm wrong, correct me, on the campaign trail did he ever utter a single word about his desires for Greenland or
Greenland.
Canada or the like this is all stuff like right on inauguration day. It's like he's making these speeches and it's like, well, where's this coming from? Like I didn't vote for that. So
Could you just politically, you would describe yourself as a conservative? How would you describe yourself generally politically?
yeah, I mean, I would say overall I'm conservative. I wouldn't say I'm ultra conservative. I would say I'm like center right, probably moderate conservative.
I described myself, I was Tea Party. I got to write the book on the Tea Party. I still consider myself Tea Party. I'm generally a free market libertarian kind of a conservative.
Yeah.
Um, uh, do could could it have ever gotten to the point, because I get asked this a lot, where you ever could have voted for a Democrat in 20 or 24?
Yeah, they have to radically change for me to even consider them.
They'd have to change.
Yes, 100%. And they haven't learned their lesson since they have lost this last election. They are doubling down on the crazy. I can't believe it. And it's like you look at these straw polls and you have Kamala and AOC at the top of their list for 2028. It's like, what is going on here? They are not they are doubling down.
Yeah, no, they've got obviously a lot to figure out. But
Yeah.
so if you if you ever felt like I felt like Trump was a legit threat to democracy and the rule of law, he wanted to be a king, a dictator.
Mhm.
If you felt that, as I do, could you ever vote for a Democrat even if you disagreed with that Democrat on most policy? Or what would you do?
It would have to depend on what that
Mhm.
policy is. If it's, if it's just disagreeing on policy, I'm not going to rule that out. But if it's, running on keeping the border wide open, if and handing money to Iran, uh, just for a couple examples, no, I don't want to vote for someone. The open border thing to me is especially a big problem the Democrats had the last 4 years. So they would have to radically tone it down, and I think that's what it's crazy because the Republicans are so not common sense in the way that they have Trump leading them in a lot of the rhetoric and chaos and drama surrounding them, but they somehow do have common sense on their side when it comes to like things like the border, for example. Like that's a very common sense thing that shouldn't even be a Republican or Democrat issue, but it really is nowadays. So like the Democrats would just have to find some common sense. I wouldn't have to agree with everything they would do. But it does depend on the degree of grave threat that I perceive Trump to be. Because I will say with this week with his, I'm not joking about a third term. So I've actually talked to a lot of people I know about this, and I get the same answer every time. That's never going to happen. He's trolling. It's a he's trying to get a rise out of the lip, and I'm like, well, you know what? It's wrong either way you look at it. Either he's not
Right?
trolling, he's either not trolling because he said he's not joking, or he is trolling and he's saying I'm not joking, and you can't tell what's reality and what's not because he just says things. And we shouldn't have a president where you're trying to determine, is he serious about a third term or is this a joke? Like that shouldn't even be like a thinking process, but it is. And I will the last thing I'll say is so I don't know, I he hasn't done anything towards that. It's just he's just saying it, and I'm not a fan of that rhetoric at all. But I will say that in this term, if towards the end of it or any time during it, if he actually makes a move to circumvent the Constitution to run a third time, that will be my moment of like, I'm out. MAGA needs to completely burn to the ground. I'm totally done with all of it.
That's interesting, Will. That would be it for you. Like that
Yes,
would
if
be
he
your
if he
red line.
actually seriously tries for third term, then I would be like, I'm so out. This is everything about this is horrible and un-American.
Amen. So back up. So that's really interesting. So, and maybe you disagree with me.
Mhm,
What was my red line? So I publicly came out against Trump, Helsinki, the summer of 2018,
mhm.
when he stood next to Putin and said, I believe Putin and not my own people. That was it. But um, when he lost in 2020, and for the first time in American history, we didn't have a president accept the results of an election. Like, did that come close to a red line for you? Never
Yeah.
conceded and
No,
said he
well,
won and it was stolen and blah, blah, blah. Go ahead.
yeah, well, I remember telling myself on January 6th, I'm done. I'm done with him. Um, and then and then the next 4 years happened. Um,
But stop,
so
stop, stop. That's interesting, Will. And That's
Yeah.
why I so fucking love to have these conversations, because you and I can just both be honest.
Hmm.
So like I was on, I had a conservative talk radio show on when January 6th happened, and a
Yeah.
lot of his hardcore supporters for a few days, they would call into my show and say, "Joe, I'm with you. I'm done with him." You were Did you feel you felt that way immediately after Jan 6th?
Yeah. I mean, I thought yeah, it was a horrible day.
Um, and then over the course of 4 years, did you think he'd run again after January 6th? Like
No,
he'd be you didn't? Okay.
no. I mean, in the primary, and I know you're not a fan of him either, but in the primary, I was all in for DeSantis. I wanted him.
Oh, you're killing me, Will.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I got it. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially that first couple of years after Jan 6th,
Mhm.
even a lot of Trump people were with DeSantis and wanted him to, they wanted somebody like that, but without all the drama that Trump came with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but then, oh, so what's interesting then is in that primary, Trump, DeSantis, boom, 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 you were kind of hoping for DeSantis until,
I was all in for DeSantis. I spent most of my time every day debating Trump supporters, trying to get them to drop him.
were you surprised it didn't work out? DeSantis?
I actually was. I obviously misread everything, but I thought he had a real shot. And you know what? I think he could have won it if Trump decided to show up to those debates, which is exactly why he didn't. Because I think it would have been the contrast would have been unreal.
So then Trump gets the nomination, and by the time he gets the nomination and he's the nominee and he's going to run against Biden, and then Biden's out, and um, are you fully on board with Trump at that point once he became the nominee? Back
No,
in
it took me a while to get there because I actually went through two phases. I went through the January 6th, I'm done with him, and then I went through the primary thing when I was debating Trumpers all the time, and I was like, I'm done with him then. And then he became the nominee, and so I guess you could say what I'm describing is a toxic relationship, but
Well, it that no,
but-
that's I no, I that's part of what I hear. And if I were a
yeah,
jerk, I would have said something like that. But in your defense, even if I disagree, it's a binary choice. And as disappointed as you may be in him, even if you have a toxic relationship with Trump, you've still got issues with who and what the Democrats are.
yeah, and like I said to you before, I knew I was taking a risk, and I was really
Mm.
hoping it would be like his first term. Um, but I knew, I did get a feeling in my stomach after the election. I wasn't expecting him to get the popular vote. As soon as he got the popular vote, I remember thinking like, "Oh, he totally thinks he has the reins now. Like the majority of America voted for him. Like he's just gonna go. He's just gonna go balls to the wall, and that's kind of what he's doing." So.
The Constitution be damned. You don't think, do you think people like me are Democrats? I
No, I
shouldn't
don't.
say
I don't.
people like me, like a lot of us in the never Trumper space.
No, I would describe you as a never Trumper and not a Democrat.
But there probably are people in my space, never Trumper space, who deep down are probably more Democrats. Yeah, I think
Uh-huh.
it's all over the map. Um, uh, as you've observed me and followed me over the number of years, do you feel like I've become less conservative?
Uh,
This is your shot, Will, to take a shot at me, you knucklehead.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm just trying to think because I should have compiled some things because
Oh,
I'm trying to think of some posts. Because for sure in the past I've seen you post some things where I've thought that's not very conservative.
yeah.
And I'm trying to think. I mean, I mentioned one earlier, which was the trans one, but we talked about that. Oh
No,
gosh.
no. Look, there've been a few.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I'm still generally the same Tea Party guy philosophically that went to
Oh,
Congress. Go ahead, jump
yeah.
in.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, as I thought of an example is, I think we have different definitions of woke because
Yeah.
when you were saying I'm a woke conservative, I'm like, those two words don't really mesh.
Give me you start. Give me your and you're by the way, most of America is probably with you on like woke is not a popular word anymore. But give me your definition. When you hear woke, what is it?
Woke to me, a lot of it comes down to almost similar to DEI, where woke to me comes down to kind of like putting aside merit and more focusing on people's identity, whether that's racial or their sexual orientation or their gender. A lot of the wokeness comes down to that stuff. And I don't even know, I don't know if I would consider this woke, but I guess, you kind of have that thing going, that mindset, that woke mindset going on the left. And then the other one that I've noticed over the years is just this total looking down on America as if we're not actually all that great.
Mhm.
We shouldn't be looking forward. We should always be atoning for our past sins, and we're actually defined by those sins. Um, I don't know if I would call that woke, but I would say it's closely linked. But woke is also one of those terms where, um, yeah, it is a pretty broad term, and I think it just kind of means
Completely.
broadly left because for everybody it means something else, I guess. But
Completely, completely.
yeah,
And and again, I may be wrong in my definition, but I call myself proudly woke because it's a recognition to me that uh, um, there are systemic inequities and systemic injustices that I wasn't always aware of that I now am more aware of. Like, I'll give you one example, Will, and then again, disagree with me if you want.
yeah,
Like, if you and I were talking 8 years ago and somebody said to me, Black Lives Matter, I'd have said, oh, go jump. All lives matter. Get lost with that. I'm very pro cop. But I know enough and I've talked to enough Black Americans over the last number of years. And truthfully, I've talked privately with enough cops that cops generally, do the damn best they can. But often Black lives are not treated the same as white lives by cops. So like I grew woke in that I learned why that phrase was important. I'm not talking about the organization Black Lives Matter, but
yeah.
just why that phrase was. So when I say woke, it's just like I've just opened my eyes into some of these areas where there's more injustices going on than I realized. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I quite agree with that, but I see what you're saying. That makes sense.
And I think like again, Will, I think like the left can go way too far pushing DEI and things and pushing we've got to have equal results that I don't believe in. I believe in equal opportunity. So
Yeah.
then so then along comes Trump and MAGA, which I would argue is a dangerous overreaction where we're going to, in the Defense Department, we're going to eliminate any and all references to minority soldiers and all the rest. So it just seems like, again, the answer is kind of right here in the middle. This is the greatest country in the history of the world. Slavery is our original sin. We are not a true, fair, black and white society yet. Let's keep working for it. Boom, boom, boom.
Hmm.
To me, it's just the answer's kind of in the middle. It's not the extreme MAGA right on this shit, and it wasn't the extreme left that America sucks and America's always bad. No.
Yeah. I mean, also, and the DEI thing. Unless
That's a perfect example. I agree. I think the and then jump in. I think the mission of the impulse for why we would need DEI, I think is spot on. I may think there's more systemic injustice than you do.
uh
So let's figure out ways to try to help that and work on that. And like with everything, maybe it went too far in certain areas, but I worry the overreaction will be too far. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just unless there's several examples I'm not aware of. In terms of just removing minority, any references to a minority, I don't agree with that. I did see that, well, this was early on. I do remember that the DEI initiatives were put out in the Defense Department, and there was a whole incident where the Tuskegee Airmen were removed, and then um,
There's a
and then
bunch of that. Yeah.
Hegseth came in though, and he said he reinstalled it. He's like, no, no, no. These are people within the agency that are doing, like, we did not ask to do that. Like they're what was the term for it? Malicious compliance. I'm sure you've heard that.
Hmm.
So that was an example of that happening where it was immediately overridden by the administration, and they said that's absolutely not what we want to do. Um, unless this is a much more widespread thing that I don't know about, and that they haven't fixed.
I, I, th- I worry that it is more widespread than we know. And it's kind of like, Will, like people in this country illegally and being tough on the border. I was always a border hawk back in the day. I, I,
Yeah.
I support increased legal immigration a lot more than the Republican Party does. But yeah. When it comes to illegal immigration, and if you're a violent criminal and you're in this country illegally, get the hell out of here. Let's get them
Hmm.
out of here.
Yeah.
But again, the constitutionalist in me doesn't like what Trump is doing now, kind of grabbing people because of things they say, things they've written. They're anti-Israel. And then, oops, accidentally, a few innocent people are thrown into that El Salvador jail. I worry that we're not doing this in the right constitutional American way. Respond to that.
Well, I'll respond to both of them. I'll start with the Palestine thing. Is I don't think it's necessarily just for being anti-Israel. I think it's more openly aligning yourself with a terror group that wants Israel and the U.S. destroyed. Um,
Well,
uh,
it's cool. Well, you and I may disagree on this because you and I are both equally super pro-Israel. In fact,
yeah.
I don't know that there's anybody more pro-Israel than me, but I'll say you and I are the same. Um, I believe that any American has a right to peacefully protest in support of Hamas,
Mhm.
peacefully protest against the state of Israel. Do you believe an American citizen has the right to do that?
Yeah, and then that begs the whole debate of does someone here on a green card or a visa share all the same constitutional rights as a citizen? Because I guess some of the way I see it as well is there are provisions that allow for you to revoke a visa or not give a visa to somebody if you deem them a foreign policy threat, like a foreign threat, or aligning themselves with foreign groups that you believe are a threat. And so, if if there's something that someone is doing that when you are giving them that visa, that when they're applying for it, if you found that they were sympathetic to Hamas, you wouldn't give it to them. So if they're here and the
What
reason
if
they're
they're
here,
forget Hamas for a moment. What if someone's coming here on a student visa and they've written a couple articles super critical of the state of Israel? Is that enough to deny a student visa? Or if they're here, would that be enough to snag them in your mind?
no, there's a difference between just being anti-Israel and aligning yourself with terror groups.
Do you believe, Will, that someone here on a student visa post October 7th could peacefully, you and I totally agree that a lot of the shit that was going on in campus was not
Mm.
peaceful, and the colleges dropped the fucking ball, and again, let the colleges are to blame, I think, for a lot of this. But if you're here on a student visa post October 7th and you're peacefully protesting in support of the Palestinians, are you okay with that?
Yeah, well, I think it gets a little dicey because I think if you wanted to remove that person, that you would have to prove um, that this person was breaking campus law, or they were waving a Hamas flag of or something of that nature. But I will say that's also some of the problem is um, maybe not all these protests, but the majority of them were illegal. Like they just the presence of them taking over campus and building encampments in places they were not supposed to and barring students from class. your presence being in that group illegally is breaking the law. So it is dicey, but you would have to prove that. But yeah, it's tricky. But I no, if they would have to be breaking a law or being in full support of
Well,
Hamas.
yeah, you make a good point. It's tricky because the colleges enabled so much of it.
They did.
So you're going to blame the student for because the college let them all live in an encampment, or the colleges let them block Jewish kids going to school. That you're right. That's a tricky gray area. I just like I have a problem with so many on my MAGA right
Mhm.
who don't know that due process applies to everybody in America, citizens and non-citizens. If you're here on a student visa, per our Constitution, you are still entitled to due process. If you're a Venezuelan gang member in this country, you're still entitled to due process. And I get it, Will. I get into so many arguments with my former supporters who are MAGA now, who just tell
Uh-huh.
me who just believe due process only applies to American citizens. Forget all the rest. I think that's a problem. Like the Constitution to me is still the most important thing.
Uh-huh. That's
Um,
that's that's interesting. Because yeah, because that spills over to the other thing we were talking about with the deportations.
oh yeah, I like I've been in a funny position because I'm so pro-Israel. A lot of my pro-Israel friends are angry at me because I'll defend Mahmoud Khalil. I'll defend I'm forgetting her name, the woman who was grabbed a week and a half ago who'd written a couple op-eds critical of Israel. Um,
Yeah.
but I acknowledge, Will, I'm a free speech absolutist, so I would probably go further than you. I think someone here on a student visa, if they want to protest and peacefully wave the Hamas flag, they have a right to do it. I can see where some folks on the right will disagree with me on that.
But would you agree with me that you can revoke that person's visa and send them back if they are breaking campus law?
Well, they don't have to commit a crime for us to revoke their visa. So clearly, if they broke campus law, that's
Mhm.
certainly a reason that you could revoke someone's visa. Yes, completely. Um,
Yeah.
I would err on the side of not doing it because I think it's one of the coolest things that makes America so unique. And
Mhm.
I'll give you the final word on this, Will. I love this topic. Like what
Mhm.
makes us so fucking cool is you can come here from anywhere in the world and go to school here on a student visa. And we are so damn confident in what we are and that we allow free speech that you coming here on a student visa, we're going to give you the same damn constitutional rights an American citizen would have, the same free speech rights, because that's how awesome, uniquely awesome we are. Like I love that. And so I hate showing the rest of the world that if you come here on a student visa and you're really critical of America or Israel, we're going to revoke your visa. To me, that just makes us look petty and small and like too many European countries that are not as good on speech as we are. But respond to that, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, oh, well, I do think there's a difference between, to me, it crosses the line when it comes to violence. So you
Always.
can you can criticize America, but there's a difference between that and going on social media and saying, I wish for the full scale destruction of Western civilization as you wave a Hamas flag, and the only reason you're here is because you are enjoying the privilege of our education system because we let you come here. The least you could do is not wish that, not support a terror group that would gladly see this entire country burned to rubble. So that's kind of the way I see it. But um,
Mhm, mhm.
if that's in your mind, if that is an unconstitutional opinion, then you should send me some stuff so I can learn why that is. But that's just the way
Well,
I see it.
you know what we'll do, Will? You and I can bat some material back and forth between us because
Mhm.
and this is what I worry about with Trump because I think he is a dictator and uh, he'll grab anybody off the street. Um, but yeah, we've like the law and the Constitution pretty much extends certainly due process, but most the same damn constitutional rights anybody in this country has that an American citizen has. And sometimes the courts can go fuzzy on that, but I think that's a uniquely really cool American thing. Um,
Hmm.
let's and we'll continue this conversation, but let's like I'm older than you. I don't think I'll ever go back to the Republican Party because I think it'll be a MAGA party for my lifetime. And because I'm so anti-Trump, I don't think the Republicans would ever have me back. So I'm probably a political independent, or I become a really conservative Democrat.
Yeah.
When you look at the future of the Republican Party, what do you see, or what do you hope? Where do you hope it goes?
Uh, well, there's a difference between what do I hope and what do I see, but
Tell me
uh,
first. Tell me what you see.
uh, well, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but with the way things are going, it's only been what, like 3 months, four
Yeah,
months since Trump's been president, which is
yeah.
wild because he's done more things and both good and bad than most presidents have done in years in 4 months. So the way I see it going is I see Trump still trying to test the edges of his executive power throughout the years. I do have faith in the Supreme Court. I don't subscribe to the narrative that I don't think they're all Trump's goons. I don't think they're just going to rule with him all the time. Um, I think more things will start to be challenged more and more with the Supreme Court. Um, uh, he will be limited in that way, but that doesn't mean he's not going to
And
still try to.
by the way, just for my context,
Yeah.
do you think it's a good thing, checks and balances, that the courts will check a lot of his unrestrained power? Like, if you think the courts will hold on a lot of the stuff he's doing, do you think that's a good thing?
Yes.
Okay.
I would be really concerned if that wasn't happening. But
I love that. That's principled. Thank you, Will.
yeah, of course. Yeah, no, without the courts, I would be a lot more fearful.
Yeah.
Um, so we definitely need that. But so I see I see the Republican Party going the way it is now, probably sticking with Trump fully these next 4 years. And then I really hope that he doesn't really try to stay a third term or pull something. But I truly do think that if something drastic like that does happen, I think there actually will be a major point of deciding. And I don't think the entire Republican Party will go along with it if it comes to something like that. And I think there is going to be some sort of political implosion for the party that who knows if they'll ever recover from. But um, so that I don't know. That's kind of like the pessimistic like I hope that it doesn't happen, but like I could see that it could kind of viewpoint. Um, and what I
If it's
hope happens,
tell
yeah,
me what you hope happens to the party.
what I hope happens is I hope that these next 4 years, Trump leaves office, and suddenly people can breathe and be like, ah, okay. Well, we know the voters like the border. They know we like what we did with the economy. They know we like a lot of reform policy. Let's keep going with that, and we don't have to deal with this baggage. We don't have to deal with this chaos, uh, and they can
And
have much
and
smoother sailing.
and and my young conservative, Trump goes away, and then they nominate who in 2028? Who would be your ideal nominee?
That's actually a good question.
And you don't have to have one name. Throw a couple names out that you'd love to see.
Well, like I told you before, I do like DeSantis, but someone else I've warmed up to a little bit that I didn't like during the primary, but over time I started like a little bit more is Nikki Haley. So I could possibly see her being in charge. I feel like who it's gonna be is JD Vance. Um, not a huge fan of that, but
Do
uh,
you my last question, Will, do you agree with me that principled conservative never Trumpers like me could probably never win in the Republican Party again for the foreseeable future? Do you agree with that?
um, yeah,
Yeah.
probably. I mean, if you're, yeah, if you're, like if I let's say if I'm started running, let's say right now, if I wanted a good shot, in my opinion, I would not make my platform never Trump, probably. I would probably just not, I would run on solid conservative principles, but I wouldn't really address him or go out of my way to support him.
Yeah.
Um, but unless I guess I would do that to win. But if I get in, maybe I won't get elected again. But maybe I'll be a little bit more critical of Trump. But just in terms of getting in the office, I probably wouldn't just talk about him that much.
Yeah. Right now, certainly, if you want to get elected as a Republican, you got to hug him. You got to love him and embrace him and be a Trumpy. Maybe that will change. Like, I even think Nikki Haley's not. She like tries to straddle this fence, and I don't think that's MAGA enough. But we'll see. Hey, this has been fun, man. Will, by the way, Will Murphy, follow him on Twitter at Will_M1399. A young conservative, younger than me. I'll bet you, man, as we close, if you and I on our top 10 policy issues, you and I probably agree on most, though. This is my last one. Tariffs suck. Tariffs suck. Do you agree with me?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and I'll make this short, but I'll just say that tariffs, I see them being useful as a quick leveraging tool in order to strike deals. But I don't even think that's what Trump is doing anymore. The more he talks about tariffs, the more he actually treats them like they are his economic solution. And if your economic plan is tariffs, then that's really, really bad. He seems to be going in that direction, and the stock markets aren't having it. There's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot less people are going to invest here. So it's not good.
Thank you, my friend. Let you and I stay in touch, and I'm going to send you some info on some of the constitutional stuff when it comes to non-citizens, and you and I'll stay in touch. Will, thank you, man.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Got it. Be brave, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been The Social Contract with Joe Walsh.